Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody had a great day. It's chilled out a little bit here in Madeira Beach, Florida, to be honest with you. It's chilled out. Usually when I am doing my work at my place, and I do most of my work at home, I can just kind of hang out, sweatpants, t-shirt, and usually in bare feet. Not now. The floor of the Dentzel Domain has gotten a little chilly. Even though it got into the 70s today in the morning, at night gets down into the 50s. I know you people in the north that are listening to this, you all think I'm a little bit of a wimp. Probably. But I lived 28 years, almost 28 years in Pennsylvania. I endured my share of snow and cold. So I think I earned a little bit of warm weather when I lived in Las Vegas and now here in Florida. So maybe, what do they say, that the blood is thinned or something like that? I don't know if that's... Is that really the medical case? Is that really what happens? I think people just aren't used to it. They don't get used to it. And it's particularly funny that when I do go to disc golf tournaments, they're a little chilly. These Florida people who've been here the whole time, they got these hats on and long sleeves and long pants and all this, and still there is a little bit of northern guy in me that I'll show up and I'll be wearing just a t-shirt and hat and whatever else. These Florida people, they really know how to bundle up. I don't know if it's the thinning of the blood or you're just not used to it. I just don't know. All I know is the last few days I've had to wear my slippers around my place, and I love my slippers. I hate having cold feet. So I love my slippers. Love them, love them, love them. Wear socks, put the slippers on, and I'm ready to go. Speaking of ready to go, before I get to the show, I want to remind you can find my books at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Edward Dentzel there. You find all of my books. You can download them to your Kindle in a matter of moments. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Finally encountered somebody else with a Reagan.com email account like myself. And you know who it happened to be? Don Newen from Cowboy Logic. He and I emailed each other back and forth today. And I even told him, I think you're the first person besides myself I run into that has a Reagan.com account, which was kind of cool. Email me, follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. You can find me also at my website, edwarddentzel.com. And you can watch my highlight reel there. You can find my shows in the iTunes Store. You can now find them at Podbean and on SoundCloud. Haven't really talked about that too much. Just started that. Still not sure what I'm going to be doing with those locations, but my shows can now be found there. Have to upload them to put them there. Then you can find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So let's get right to the show. Donald Trump, he's been causing some issues. You know, I forgot to even mention this. You know, yesterday I got so caught up talking about Pearl Harbor and how we look at it compared to how we look at September 11th, 14 years since that happened. I got so caught up talking about that. Of course, that's an important topic, especially since yesterday was Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. I forgot to mention that this past weekend I met with another radio host, talk show host on Red State Talk Radio, Denise Simon. Kind of met at a Starbucks, talked for about an hour and a half. Very interesting woman. You should be listening to her show. She does a little bit different kind of show than I do. I think that she does mostly interviews. She has a lot of great connections to people behind the scenes, and that's we talked about that a little bit. And she loves getting points of view and seeing things through people in the military's eyes, people who have maybe the retired military people, retired government people, who now look at what's going on in the Middle East and elsewhere and love seeing things through their eyes. And she knows some of those people, has them on her show. You should check that out. Me, I just talk for the entire time and give kind of a layman's point of view, which I think you need a lot of times. But I also think that she does a nice job in giving a different point of view from people who are on the inside. I think both points of view are very relevant, can be very helpful in seeing what's going on and understanding what's going on these days, both in the United States and outside of it. But I was talking to her. She just happens to live not far away. I just discovered that recently. And one of the first people we talked about was Donald Trump, and she's not a fan of him just like I am. And I'm going to be going over that a little bit today, but that's just what I thought of when I discovered I was going to be talking about Donald Trump first today. I just realized that I hadn't told you that we met. She and I met. Like I said, had a really good conversation. Talked about guns a little bit. All sorts of cool stuff. But Donald Trump, when I was talking to her on Friday, I told her the problem I think we have here, giving her analogy and now giving you the same analogy, is that I think that Republicans, too many of them out there, have decided to draft with the wrong guy. You might think of it in terms of the Tour de France, the bicycle race that takes place every June, right? Every June. And sometimes I will catch that. I'm not into bicycling at all, but it's cool seeing the French countryside, and you can watch that and know that it's not the United States. There's just something about it when you watch them going through these little towns and the buildings look so old. It's very interesting to me, even though technically I'm not really into cycling. But if you watch that sport, there's always, during one of the legs, some guy or a couple guys who, beginning early in the stage, they get out ahead of the rest of the group, what they would call the peloton, where most of the riders are. And that guy will try to break away, and then most of the time the group ends up catching the guy before the end of the stage. And sometimes it's within a quarter mile of the end. It's weird how that all works. It's very interesting. But see, Donald Trump, he's out ahead of the peloton, the rest of the GOP contenders, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, Charlie Fiorina, whoever else. And it seems like we as the voters, and although I would consider myself back in the peloton, there are some who have decided to follow Donald Trump in him getting out ahead. But see, there's always a problem with that if you're not the person who's willing to lead. And we know that nobody leads Donald Trump, whether in the race or in his social life or anything else. He's going to be the big dog. He's not going to take any orders from anyone else. And that's fine as long as a person like that is making good decisions. But it certainly seems now that he is that cyclist who's out front and we're drafting him, but now he's going a little fast. And I think maybe there are a lot of people out there who have been supporting him to this point, that have been drafting it with him, following him, thinking he knows what he's doing. And now we're getting into some hills and some valleys and some twists and turns. And Donald Trump, he's not taking his feet off the pedals. He's not coasting. He's not hitting the brakes. He's weaving all this, coming very close to, and if you ever watch some of these stages over in France, you know that these riders are right up against cliffs. And there's just these little rock walls between them and them going over the side. I mean, it's very, very dangerous. But that's Donald Trump. He's going down these mountains, flirting with disaster, to use a interesting statement, but it's still a cliche. And we're drafting behind him because why? Because that's the guy that Republicans, a majority of Republicans, a lot of Republicans right now, have chosen to draft with. But the problem is he's not slowing down, and we're afraid, if we hit our brakes, then we're going to lose our draft with him, and then the entire group behind us is going to catch us. And it may just be that really Donald Trump is going to win this. Maybe he will maneuver through all of these twists and turns and end up winning by a lot. And so I think a lot of people who are supporting him are caught in this. They're afraid to leave him because they think he might actually win, but they're thinking about leaving him because they now see that wow, if we follow this guy too much, then we're going to lose too. You know, we're going to follow him right over this edge. And I was explaining this in a much shorter way, I guess, to Denise Simon this past weekend. And she thought she really liked that analogy. So I thought that I would pass that on to you. That it's kind of what it's like. That he's this guy that you're either going to maybe win quite a bit, but the odds are that you're probably going to go over the side of the mountain with him more likely. It's probably more likely what's going to happen. Even though he'll tell you to the very end that he knows what he's doing. And the reason you continue to draft with him, because you know what? You want to win, and you don't think that staying with one of the people who's back in the peloton, like those other GOP contenders, is going to be the way to win. See, it's tough. And a lot of I'm not, like I said, I don't put myself in that category. You know, I've not been a fan of Donald Trump since the beginning, well before he ever thought about running for president. So I'm not in that. I'm not in that group. I'm not drafting with him. I'm not feeling forced to stay with him. But I think a lot of people are. Because unfortunately they believe, for some reason, that he's the right guy. He's the only person that can beat Hillary Clinton, on and on and on. So I made that analogy up the end of last week, before he even started talking about keeping Muslims entirely out of the United States. This goes back to what I said the week before, maybe the beginning of last week or the week before. How do you do that? Being that we are the conservatives and we have all sorts of ideas, good ideas about keeping people, illegals, out of the United States. But how do you keep out Muslims specifically? How do you pick out who the Muslims are and who the Christians are and who the Jews are and who the atheists are and who the Hindus are and everyone else? See, I don't know how you do that. I don't think they give out religious identification cards in any of these countries. That you have if they even do give out even driver's licenses in some of these countries. Do they give out driver's licenses in Syria? Do they do that? I have no idea. But if they do, I'm sure that it doesn't have a person's religious affiliation. Now, it may be that the person's name's Muhammad or something like that. But what if you don't have ID or no passport or identification is ever going to have somebody's religious affiliation on it? So I want to ask Donald Trump, how are you going to do this? If you just want to tell me that you're going to keep out all Syrians, okay. We can talk about that. Syrian refugees, I'm not a fan of them. But I'm not a fan of them no matter what their religious affiliation is. All right? That's just the way I feel about it. And it doesn't even have to do with some constitutional issue now that people today were talking about. They're talking about, well, is it constitutional to just say you're going to exclude all people from a particular religion? I couldn't be less fazed by that conversation at all. I know it's getting a lot of traction on Twitter, a lot on social media. It's going to give people on all those blogs out there who need something to write plenty of material. Good for them. I'm just more interested on how you weed all these people out. Even if you say you want to keep out all Muslims, how are you going to do that? Say you wanted to keep out all Christians. How would you do that? Just keep everybody from Italy from coming to the United States. Keep out all the Catholics. When I think of Catholics, I think of Italy for obvious reasons. So say we wanted to keep out all Catholics from the United States. I guess we'd have to exclude everybody from Italy. Do you see how crazy this gets? I don't know how you determine who is who. Now, I can understand if somebody doesn't have the proper paperwork. But it even seems in that case that if the paperwork is fake, they can get in, just like maybe it seems like Chashfin Malik got in here. You know, we've covered that story. That story's been out there for a few days now. But how are you going to do that? You can't scan for a person's religion. You can't outright ask. I mean, you can ask them, but there's no guarantee they're going to tell you the truth. You could ask them to recite something from the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or whatever else. They may fake it. They may tell the truth. They may be prepared. You just don't know. I don't know. But this passes as a brilliant statement by Donald Trump. I don't know. I just don't know how you do that. Once again, I know how you keep people out. I know how we could keep illegals from coming in through Mexico out. Just people, their bodies, their minds, their hearts, their skeletons and skin and everything put together. I know how you do that. I just don't know how you pick out the Muslims from the Christians, from the Jews, from the atheists, from everybody else. Maybe they have a way. I just don't know what that is. But he'll get away with that. I don't know how much it's going to hurt him. I saw enough left-wingers on Twitter today, yesterday, talking about it, that they're banging on the Constitution, that no, we shouldn't be able to do that. And Jazz Shaw at Hot Air took a look into it. He said maybe, and he's no fan of Donald Trump, you know what? There technically isn't any specific court case about this. He cited something from 1993, something to have to do with Haitians or something like that. I mean, we can let in whoever we want in the United States, and we can see. My attitude is we can exclude anyone we want to. I mean, if we wanted to stop everyone from coming to the United States today, we could do that. But once again, that's in the context of them actually being humans and having nothing to do with their religious affiliation. I just don't know how you filter certain people out. So I'd like Donald Trump to try to explain that to me. Or if anybody could explain that to me. I mean, is it just because they come from a certain country that we suspect that they're Muslims, so they have to be excluded? That doesn't sound like a very foolproof way to me. Especially considering we know that these people can get fake IDs and they're really from Syria, but they might have fake identification from Turkey. They might have fake identification from Jordan. They might have fake identification from Morocco or Tunisia or countries that may be a little friendlier with the United States. Then what do you do? And they say they're Christian, and I guess you're just going to have to believe them, and suddenly they're in the United States. And really, I'm not sure that even excluding Muslims from kind of coming into the United States, I'm not sure in the end it's going to fix that much. It would probably stop a little bit, but I'm not sure that is the total fix for all of this. That sounds like a Band-Aid. It doesn't sound like something that it's a workable long-term plan, a long-term fix for taking care of terrorism in the United States and outside the United States. And that's the only point we should be concerned with, is stopping terrorism in the United States and outside the United States. We should only be interested in those things that go towards stopping that. And the truth is, and as I told you, and this is an unpleasant thought, that there are plenty of Saeed Farouqs and Tashfeen Maliks, is that it? Maliks? I guess I'm giving it the Western pronunciation, Maliks, in this country already. If you think that was the only bomb-making factor in the United States in San Bernardino, California, you're wrong. And that's what's scary about all this. But those people are already here. What are you going to do about them? Even if you could conceivably keep out every person that you think may be a terrorist or just a plain Muslim, you still got a lot of issues here. I think that just saying excluding Muslims gives people a false sense of security. And once again, I'm not even going to get into the constitutional aspects of this. Like I said, Jazz Shaw at Hot Air talked about it today. Other people have talked about it. I just don't. Even if whether it's constitutional or not, I don't even know how you do it. So there's that. There's another thing going on with Donald Trump that's interesting to me, and maybe this at least flies in the face a little bit of him being so popular. I've talked about this site, Ricochet.com, which I'm not a member of anymore simply because really the only thing you get from being a member there is commenting on what people write there. And I'm not much of a commenter. I don't have time to comment and then on an article there, and then somebody argue with me and then have this back and forth going all day or something. I just don't have any time for it. So either I have to decide to comment and not respond at all, or not comment at all. And I've chose to just not comment at all. Well, if I'm not going to comment, it's no reason to be a member. I can still go there and read everything, and I can still listen to some of the podcasts that are very good there. Some of their podcasts aren't so good. A couple of their podcasts are really good. But there they did a poll, and you have to keep in mind this was a poll that was meant for only subscribers at Ricochet.com. I would say that your average Ricochet member is not as conservative as I am. Maybe close. If on the conservative review scale that I've talked about quite a bit in the last couple months, I think your average Ricochet member would be in the 80 percentile range, 80, 85%, something like that. I'd like to think that I'm up in the 90s, if not 100%. But there are a lot of people there, and having read a lot of conversations there, that are down in the 60% or the 50%. Well, they did a poll of their subscribers to see who they support. And what's interesting to me is that, like I said, this is not a hardcore right-wing site. And even there, Donald Trump gets very, very, very low support. Very low support. Ted Cruz gets a ton of support. Marco Rubio gets his fair share of support in the poll that I saw, and I didn't, unfortunately, write down the numbers. Carla Fiorina got some votes. Ben Carson got some votes. But Donald Trump is well down the list toward the bottom. And they have all of the nominees, and they do first choice, second choice. And in neither case is Donald Trump near the top. So once again, I have to ask, who are the Donald Trump supporters? Because like I said, Ricochet.com is not a hardcore right-wing site where it's all people who are like me there, who have despised Donald Trump for at least a few years now. It's a wide spectrum of people. There are some pro-immigration people there and amnesty people there, and people who maybe are more like us, more anti-illegal immigration and anti-amnesty, anti-DREAM Act. It runs the gamut. You may even find some pro-choicers there. But all in all, I think your average person there is Republican. But it averages out to about 80%, once again, on the conservative view. But even there, on a site that's somewhere in the middle, I would say, of Republican ideology, Donald Trump doesn't do very well. But then you see these polls out there that show that he's so far ahead. And I wonder, how can it be so different? I can understand that the numbers wouldn't exactly be the same. I could understand if it ricocheted, Donald Trump came in third instead of first. And I could see that if Ted Cruz, I guess he's now out ahead in Iowa. If he came in second, it ricocheted to Ben Carson or something. That would all make sense to me. Or if Donald Trump's in first in Iowa, but he's third in Ricochet, that would make sense to me, given it's a little bit different people, different demographics of the people who are being polled. But it's a considerable difference between Donald Trump and his national numbers and the numbers at Ricochet.com. In fact, they're night and day. And there are considerable difference in numbers between what Donald Trump, the numbers he is getting in Iowa, and he's currently in second place, compared to, once again, what he's getting at Ricochet. And remember, like I said, you can't just go on there and vote. Somebody can't just come across Ricochet and say, oh, they're having a poll here, I get to vote. You have to be a member. I couldn't vote. You had to be a member. All I could do was see the results. And I'm guessing, being that I know Ricochet is a pretty well-run site, you couldn't vote more than once. You probably had to put some information in there, who you are, to vote. So I believe it was one member, one vote, and these are the results that you got. Donald Trump barely registered there. And I, once again, ask all of you that I've been asking for at least since last summer, who are these people that support Donald Trump? I see them on Twitter. In fact, I'm probably even following them, a few of them, on my Twitter feed. They seem like they're everywhere. They act like they're the smartest political people in the world. Well, you know what? Ricochet.com has a lot of smart, regular, average Joe Americans, very smart political people there. And very few of them support Donald Trump. So what is it? I made the point of, I'm going to go back to, say, September, that it's what I found, and I really maybe should take another look at this regarding Twitter, is that I found that a lot of these people who are the strongest Trump supporters on Twitter are new to Twitter. Because it tells you can look at a person's bio and find out how long they've been on Twitter. I think I've been on Twitter since 2011, although I really didn't even start using it until the last few years. Something like that. Well, a lot of these people just signed up this year to Twitter, and suddenly they're all deep into politics, and they're all Trump supporters. It sounds a little bit suspicious. It just does. There's something within all of this. I can understand if they're getting missed on a telephone poll or P-O-L-L, not P-O-L-E, a telephone poll. But that's not what's going on, because it seems that these polls that are taken these days are still done by phone. It seems like the Trump supporters pick up. How else do you think that Trump's getting the numbers that he does in some of these polls? His supporters pick up. So it's not like they're hiding out or anything. They just don't show up necessarily in a poll at Ricochet.com where people are very political astute. I'm going to say it again. It just seems to me, that Donald Trump's campaign is a Fiverr campaign. That site where you can go and you can pay $5 to somebody to do something for you. You know, give a review on my book. Give a review on this album. Go do this. Teach me that. You can go to Fiverr. That's 2 R's, Fiverr.com. And I just wonder if that's what's going on. That it's really not this grassroots effort at all. It's astroturfed. And these multiple Twitter accounts with all this Trump support are nothing but the same person doing this all day and being paid to and ginning up support. I wonder. It's really got me wondering. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You know what's funny? I'm laughing. This is a true laugh. I'm not doing this for effect. I even forgot to mention in this discussion about Donald Trump in the first part of the show that the city, the real city that's closest to me, which is St. Petersburg, Florida, the mayor of the city says that Donald Trump is not allowed within the city limits. That just happened, was it this morning? Or maybe, I think it was yesterday, that he declared, being that Donald Trump talked about Muslims that way, now the mayor of St. Petersburg, Florida says, well, if he can do that, then I'm going to ban Donald Trump from ever coming into the city limits. You know what? I'm actually going to side with Donald Trump on this because you may not realize this. St. Petersburg, this, like I told you, this is not a kooky part of Florida. I told you that my representative in the House of Representatives is a Republican. His name's David Jolly. He didn't even have a Democrat run against him last year. I've told you that story a couple times. But the mayors of the cities in this area, Tampa also, and Clearwater, and St. Petersburg, they're all kooks. And so let me just tell you, Donald Trump, even though I don't care for you that much, that you're being banned from St. Petersburg, Florida, that actually you should wear that as a badge of honor. Trust me, you're not missing anything. Having been, I don't go down to St. Petersburg that often. The closest that I get to really hardcore St. Petersburg, Florida is when I go down to the disc golf course that's down there right by the Skyway Bridge. It's called, the course is called Maximo. That's about as close as I get. I've been to some Rays games, to the ugliest baseball stadium in the major leagues, maybe the ugliest baseball stadium in the history of baseball, at the Trop. So you're not missing anything, Donald Trump. You keep going over there to Coral Gables or wherever you have your golf courses, and I guess you were down in Sarasota or Bradenton recently. You keep going to those places. You never come over to Pinellas County. Of course, I don't like you anyway, but fine by me. But trust me, when you're getting banned from being over here, that's kind of a badge of honor. I would actually publicize that. I mean, how weird is that? That the city that is closest to me is the one that the mayor who first speaks up about banning Donald Trump. It wasn't San Francisco, some kook city like that. It can't be New York City necessarily. It wasn't Chicago. What would be another liberal city? I guess you could say Los Angeles, or it wasn't Seattle or Portland, Oregon. No place like that. It was St. Petersburg, Florida. You know, I think people would mostly forget about St. Petersburg, Florida, if it wasn't for the mayor speaking up and saying that Donald Trump is banned from it. So, as you can tell, I don't have a very high opinion of St. Petersburg. It's just kind of, it's to kind of explain it to you, it is a regular middle class, a little bit white trashy city posing as this artsy fartsy city. I think it thinks because it has the Salvador Dali Museum that it's all cool. And I've been to the Salvador Dali Museum, and it is cool. It's very expensive to get into. In fact, it's outrageously expensive, really. But it is cool. But other than that, St. Petersburg, as far as trying to portray itself with theater and everything, and then the kooky mayor, it's just not that. It's just not. It's just a city on the Gulf, just like any other city. That's my opinion. You can take it for what it's worth. And this is from a guy who, as you know, is a lot of an introvert, a little bit antisocial, but I've been through the city. It really, when Even when the Tampa Bay Rays were good, if they could get 10,000 to a baseball game, that was a lot. People would rather be doing other things. People would rather be doing anything else than being St. Petersburg, and those are for the people who live there. And the weekends, they get out in the boats, they go to the beach, they go here, they go there. That's just what this area is kind of like. So Donald Trump getting banned from St. Petersburg is absolutely no big deal. Let's move on to something else. I guess Saeed Farouk's dad has had enough of the media. He's not talking anymore. I guess when he saw or he heard about or read about the blowback from his statements about his son, and how he told his son that Israel wasn't going to exist in 2 years, that was enough for Saeed Farouk Sr. As I said yesterday, that just shows you the kind of thinking that goes on. That a guy like that, I mean, he originally talked to an Italian newspaper. I don't know how that happened. And it had to be translated, but now English-speaking people, reporters are seeking this guy out, I think, including Fox News. And he doesn't want to do much talking now. That he would just openly say that that was his suggestion to his son, his opinion to his son, and said it without ever thinking, well, okay, people are going to read this. I mean, yeah, I guess he believes it. That's what I talked about yesterday. He actually believes it. Because if he didn't believe it, he would be smart enough, I think, not to say it. If he was just saying that to try to, quell his son, to calm his son down, or whatever the case may be. And no. There are people out there who are now thinking that the father and Tashfeen Malik's mother knew exactly what these two were going to be doing, knew exactly the weapons. We're going to find that all out, and that'll be interesting. But if Saeed Sr. was just saying that to, like I said, calm down his son's attitude toward Israel, then why is it that when he talked to this Italian newspaper that he didn't say, well, I was telling that, but I really didn't believe it? I mean, we all know that Israel's probably going to be here for a long time. He didn't say that. He told this reporter as if he believes it as well. So, it's just fascinating. But it seems now that he's getting blowback from this and people want to continue to ask him about this statement, he doesn't want to have anything to do with it, which is, I guess, is typical, and it's almost predictable. That he doesn't want to have to defend why he said that. He just wants to be able to say it. He wants to believe it. Doesn't want to be questioned on it. Probably cannot explain to anybody how he believes that is going to happen. If you need to be reminded, he told his son, the killer, that he shouldn't worry about Israel because in 2 years, Russia, Turkey, and the United States are going to move all those Jews to Ukraine. And I guess meaning that the Arabs, whether it's the Iraqis, the Syrians, the Egyptians, whoever it is, can then go back and take that land. Not go back and take it. I don't know if they necessarily ever had it, but they'd be able to take it over now. Now I ask you, how many Muslims in the United States do you think believe that as well, besides Saeed Sr.? Probably quite a few. I'm going to say that he's not the only Muslim in the United States who thinks that. And it's just not some conspiracy, fantastical thing that they talk around the dinner table about, just kind of like a what-if scenario, like an alternative history that I sometimes do on this show. They actually believe it. That's the only way that guy would say that to those reporters. And not give some caveat at the end like, oh, well, I was just saying that to him. I really don't believe that. I was just trying to, soothe his anger that he had, 2 years from now when it doesn't happen, I'd tell him something else. It wasn't that at all. He was telling his son that because he believed it. And in there, you see the problems. And from that, you can understand, even though I think Donald Trump is crazy, that where something like keeping all the Muslims out is a good idea for the United States. Well, the problem we have that is a lot of people out there, not just Muslims, but Christians and Jews and atheists, they have a lot of crazy ideas about what goes on in the world. About why this happens, about why that happens. In fact, I may get to a story that has nothing to do with national security on that very issue here. I may get to it before the end of the show. What people believe and why they believe it, which will always be a fascinating topic to me that I don't have time to go to in this show. But Saeed Sr., he's had enough. I don't know if he'll be able to be interviewed again. I don't know if he has a job. I don't know if he goes out, if he's going to be hounded by the paparazzi, trying to get more interviews with him. I don't know what her parents are doing, dropping the baby off there, her mother. They're going to be investigated. There's a doubt, there's a suspicion they knew exactly what Tashfeen and Saeed Jr. were going to do. Maybe not exactly on that day, but the FBI is thinking that when that baby got dropped off, these parents, these other family members had to have known something. We'll see. We'll see. And I'll let you know if that's the case. I know I talked about it last week, my suspicions about it. I know that there's now a deposit that was put in Saeed's account for $28,000 from somewhere. They're looking into that. Maybe that's suspicious. It also, the FBI is finally saying that it looks like they were going to be there wasn't going to be just one attack, but maybe multiple attacks. And I'm still trying to figure out how they thought they were going to get away with the first one, because they got caught pretty easily. So I don't know if they didn't think ahead, something went wrong, I don't know. But Saeed's dad, it sounds in many ways, is just as crazy as Saeed Jr. And I guess also, in looking in my notes, that Tashfeen, I hate saying that word. It's like weird, Tashfeen, it's 2 syllables, but it's 8 letters. It's not a name that goes well with speaking English. I don't know. It's just the way it seems. But Tashi's mother has connections to some radical people, radical mosque allegedly. But once again, here's one of those issues regarding Muslims, not just in the United States, but elsewhere. You know what I'm going to probably say pretty sure? That most Muslims have connection to somebody who then has a connection to something that is connected to terrorism. It's just the way it is. And once again, it's because of that tribalism, because they tend to stick together. That doesn't mean that they're all going to go shoot up a Christmas party, or they're all going to go blow themselves up or anything. But because they are together, they happen to know people who would do that. And it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You know, I figured this out one time, that my Kevin Bacon number is 3. Because I was in a movie with a woman who was then in a movie with Robert De Niro, and then Robert De Niro was in Sleepers with Kevin Bacon. So my Kevin Bacon number is 3. That doesn't mean I know Kevin Bacon. It doesn't mean that I know Robert De Niro. The only person I know is this woman who is a very good friend of mine that I worked with for a while. And she had done some movie work in the 80s. She was actually in Midnight Run with Robert De Niro, coincidentally. So that doesn't mean that I know Robert De Niro, even though I know this woman. And that's kind of what this feels like to me. That because they're so closely knit and they have their own little communities, not just in the United States, but we know about those no-go zones in France and Paris. We know about the no-go zones in England and elsewhere. And we know those are just going to grow and get bigger as these refugees come in. It won't be a surprise if one Muslim who's somewhat moderate, has no designs on blowing himself or herself up, knows somebody who wants to do that. Maybe just knows that person, doesn't know when it's going to happen, not sure, but knows more radical types within their religion. And once again, that's what makes it so tough. It's no different than when the mafia was a lot bigger in the United States. A lot of regular New Yorkers who were Italians knew people in the mob. That did not make those Italian New Yorkers mobsters. They knew that the guy down the street maybe has a booking operation, runs a protection racket, had been in jail a couple times. You running into him at he's a parent of a kid in your little league. You run into him, you're friendly, but you know who the guy is. That doesn't make you a bad person. If he ends up in a shootout somewhere down the road, it'd be hard for you to say that Italian New Yorker who's perfectly innocent with no record, say, yeah, I knew him, but I couldn't avoid him. He's at the Little League practice. I'm at the Little League practice. What do you want me to do? Even though the guy, this innocent Italian New York City dweller, knew that the guy, what he was involved in, just didn't think just never came up. And that's what a lot of this is like within the Muslim community, not defending them. But I think that you have to put it in the proper context when you hear about this Muslim who knew this Muslim who was connected to this mosque, this red mosque in Pakistan. Well, probably. Especially when it concerns the United States, because we really don't really have that many Muslims here. So it stands to reason that it's no different. I know, for example, a woman here in the Tampa area who's from Cameroon. You can imagine there aren't many people in the United States here who were born in Cameroon, came here, and now U.S. citizens, because Cameroon's, first of all, is not a very big country. There aren't a lot of people there, so there can't be a lot of Cameroonians here, because there's only so many Cameroonians in the world. However, I can tell you, she knows a lot of people from Cameroon who are here in the United States. Why? It's, once again, trying to identify with people who are from your home country. Same thing, I think, with Muslims. And if one of those Cameroonians goes up and blows himself up somewhere, it's hard to say that this woman that I know knew about it. And see, this is the problems that you get into. And this is how you have to try to weave through all of this. And it is not easy. The only thing that we can do as American citizens regarding all of this is arm ourselves, keep your eyes open, and appeal to those regular Muslims in the United States that we know that you know this person and we know that person, and we're not asking you to do anything illegal. But if you do not let law enforcement know if one of these people is going to do something bad, then you're going to get hurt by this as well. It's going to make it very, very difficult for you too. It would be in your best interest if you see something strange, hear something strange, to let us know. Not asking you to do anything illegal. Have to bang home that message on a daily basis. It's also why keeping Muslims out of the United States, once again, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. Let's move on to something else. I told you I was going to talk about, just for a couple minutes, about why people believe the things that they do. I have to admit that I am feeling a little bit of schadenfreude, and that's a German word meaning fake. I think the literal translation is fake joy, and that means you get joy out of the suffering of somebody else. It's not a very nice word, as you can imagine. I am getting a little schadenfreude out of what the problems that Chipotle is having within the last couple months. I want you to know that I love Chipotle. I haven't been there in a few months simply because my eating habits have changed. I've talked to you about that, and I've told you I'm looking spectacular. I look as good now as I did at least 10 years ago. Just with a little tweaking here and there of my eating and working out a little bit. Amazing. But I enjoy Chipotle, but its sanctimonious self-righteousness has gotten to me about the whole anti-GMO stuff, and they posted on their signs. Well, now in the last couple months, they've had some E. coli problems. And to the point recently where a restaurant in Boston got 20 basketball players from Boston College sick from eating there. And now, so that's been like several dozen people sick over the course of like 12 different states. I wrote the states down. Illinois, Maryland, Pennsylvania, California, Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Wisconsin, and now I guess we have to add Massachusetts in there. So however many that adds up to, it's quite a few. So this is like the VA scandal. It's not just one little hospital. It was a bunch of hospitals over 5-6 different states. There was something wrong with, and there still is, with what the VA is doing. Once again, something is wrong with what Chipotle is doing. After years of them talking about how fresh their food is, and anti-GMO this, and freshness that, and we do this, and now they're having these big problems. Well, the funny thing is that there are now people, and you can find them online, and unfortunately, I know a person personally who's like this. They think it's some sort of conspiracy theory. You can go on reddit.com and you can find the Chipotle conspiracy with people saying that it's all these GMO companies, not necessarily other restaurant chains, but Archer Daniels Midland, these other big food conglomerations who want to push GMO food and genetically altered chickens and things that are now conspiring against Chipotle, and they're the ones who are causing this E. coli problem with Chipotle. You know what I say to that? I guess Chipotle's just going to have to build their fence around their fields a little higher. They want to think about electrifying those things, if that's what these people really, believe. But this is how far people can go trying to rationalize something. It's funny. Costco recently had the same issue. Costco had ended up admitting, okay, it was a salary in these salads. There was no conspiracy. There's no conspiracy. And the amount of people that they had, 19 in one location, or 19 over 7 states. Chipotle had 20 guys in one restaurant. There's no conspiracy. Nobody ever talked about the Costco conspiracy. Somebody conspiring against Costco. No, it's just, they just got some bad food. But people are so caught up in how good Chipotle is. You know what? Chipotle is a business just like any other. You know what it is? The bottom line. They market anti-GMO stuff because it's good for their business, for making money. It's not because they're necessarily worried about the health of their customers. I mean, you get one of their burritos, if you add up the calories, it's like 1,100 calories. And they're worried about people's health. But this is how they'll go to no ends to defend something that they don't know anything about. They love something so much, it's not conceivable that, you know what, Chipotle makes mistakes. It couldn't be that Chipotle makes mistakes. It has to be that somebody's conspiring against them. It couldn't be that they were cutting a couple corners for a couple bucks. No, it has to be that one of these big farm conglomerations is conspiring against them because Chipotle is anti-GMO. This is how crazy it's gotten. Kooks. But I gotta go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio, and I will talk to you again very soon.